Hey everyone, Happy New Year, and we want to say Happy New Year and welcome to the very first Radiotopia Presents of 2024. It's a series that we are truly excited about. It's called Shocking, Heartbreaking, Transformative. Now, this is from documentarian Jess Shane, who put out an open call on Craigslist and then worked with 4 strangers to explore the standard rules that documentarians and journalists use to tell their subject stories. So the series gets into all sorts of questions about what happens when people's real lives are collected, edited, and consumed. The show pulls back the curtain on what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite nonfiction shows. And then it turns in on itself and some really interesting twists and turns along the way in the making of the show. I've gotten to know Jess a little bit over the making of this show. Every time I chat with her, there's a new wrinkle to this story. It is really incredible. So go check out the new Radiotopia Presents series, Shocking, Heartbreaking, Transformative. It is out now on your favorite podcast platform. Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, May 26, 1986, over 5 million Americans, including President Ronald Reagan, 54 Elvis Presley lookalikes, Mickey Mouse, Jerry Seinfeld, and Coretta Scott King, have just held hands for 15 minutes as part of a nationwide campaign to fight American hunger and homelessness. Hands across America. Let's talk about it. I'm joined, as always, by Nicole Hemmer of Columbia. Hello, Nikki.
Hi, Jody. And
we have a guest this episode who will be with us for this and the next episode, co-host of Crooked Media's What a Day, author of the book, Obviously, and many other things, Akilah Hughes. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yo, thanks for having me.
Okay, hands across America. We'll discuss a lot of the elements around this. I find it super fascinating. But for one, let me just say, I don't think any of us see Americans lining up to hold hands with strangers anytime soon.
Touching each other at all is out.
It is like the exact opposite of this current moment.
Right. Though, God, I could see someone like galaxy braining it and being like, you know what we need? We need another hands across America. And that quickly
That's how you get herd
down.
Immunity, I guess.
Oh, the quickest way to herd immunity. There you
Exactly.
go. See, that's a free idea for people. But look, I actually do want to sort of start with this and then we'll back into some of the specifics. But other than we don't want people touching hands, could something like this, Akilah, ever happen today?
I think 0%. And I think 0% because, just politically we're so fractured and the coasts versus the middle of the country are so fractured. And so I think that we're just living in a time when it's just a very inside time. Even outside of coronavirus, I think that people are on their computers in those communities. So it's like, yeah, if you could do like a digital hands across America, but that kind of defeats the purpose.
And can you also imagine like the conspiracy theories that would sprout up around it, depending on like who was organizing it? It would be go crazy so quickly.
Yeah, like Elon Musk is not going to hold anybody's hands. He is going to be complaining loudly and incoherently on Twitter. So I don't see it happening.
And also you read some of the accounts of this and people earnestly did find it moving at the time. But I think part of it is because it was like you would go out into the middle of the street or field or whatever and like stand there quiet and removed. That would never just like logistically happen. Like news would start flying and people would start reacting in real time and it would just become sort of this chaotic, like frenzied thing.
Yeah, I think that we don't do things for the sake of doing them. We do them for the sake of people knowing we did them now. So it's like it would be people not holding hands but taking selfies like, look at all these people.
Yeah.
It's extremely not Instagrammable, which is a big problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like your hand.
Exactly. But there's also obviously like this question it brings up about earnestness and what counts as like a civic-minded moment, and then also one that's sort of propelled by celebrity culture.
Right.
So we've seen this a little bit in the COVID era. The first thing I thought of here was actually that video of all those celebrities singing Imagine that went around.
They weren't all celebrities.
They weren't all celebrities. Yeah, maybe they were B and C listers.
It's excellent shade.
Yes. But, that got roundly mocked on Twitter and elsewhere. Would something like this, which was very earnest, for good or bad, would it get sort of eaten up for those reasons as well?
Well, I think that part of it is a rejection of celebrity culture at a time of like grave danger for people. Like we don't want to hear in the middle of what feels like some bizarro world that the person who was in a movie I liked 5 years ago is singing a song. It just feels too far removed.
Yeah.
I think that there is a possibility for like earnestness to be considered good. I think it only really happens during like Super Bowl commercials. But
Right.
I think that like there's still space for it. It's just it would have to be a perfect storm of the right celebrities and like a charity element and also just, you know, something that felt like it had a meaning. And I don't really know what the meaning behind Hands Across America was, except for like an idea someone had. So maybe that's the problem.
So let's get into that. Nikki, do you want to sort of lay out kind of what the goal of this was?
Sure. So this comes off the back of the Band-Aid and Live Aid sort of initiatives of the big super hit We Are the World and Do They Know It's Christmas, an extremely problematic song about a drought in Ethiopia. And then in the United States, the same people who were associated with this decide to do a kind of what was supposed to be a fundraiser to address homelessness and hunger in the United States, so kind of turning back inward.
Okay.
And so the idea here was to line people up across America to hold hands. And I think it was both an awareness raising campaign, but also people were encouraged to give like $15 to secure their spot in order to then, you know, that would be the fundraising element of it. It did raise $34 million. It netted 15 after operating expenses. So, you know, $15 million towards a decent cause. That's something. But obviously the thing that gets mocked and the thing that gets remembered is this sort of attempt to line people up. I'll just say that I don't think anyone was really expecting that a full line of people across America would get lined up in this way. There are, you know, there's mountains and rivers and stuff.
Well, all the people are in the cities, and all the
Right.
space that needs to be covered is where there are no people.
Exactly. So,
Yeah,
you know, you
like
read
the
these
cows
interesting
have to
stories.
join in.
Well, funny enough, there's these stories of like farmers lining up their cows, you know, and whatever to kind of make it happen. That said, you know, it is worth saying that a lot of people did actually do this. At least 5 million. Some people think up to 6.5 million people did come out and hold hands for 15 minutes across America. And there has been some analysis that shows that if they were evenly distributed, it would have stretched from one end of the country to the other. So it really was this kind of massive event. I think that probably has a little to do with what we're talking about now. It's just harder to mobilize people to all do something together, both because of the fractured media environment and because of the fractured country. So I think that just wouldn't happen in this way. I want to ask one question about the kind of money element too, because there's been something going on around COVID and celebrities trying to like raise money. And I've noticed it a few times. I wonder if it relates, but like you see celebrities who are like, oh, I'm doing this project and it's going to raise money for a charity and all the proceeds will go to X charity. And one response that you see is, why don't you just give the money to the charity? Just like, be philanthropic, give away your billions.
Well, and I would also say that tactically, there's something to doing, you know, this was dismissed as a stunt, but to doing a stunt like this, because not only does it get more people involved around an issue, but it draws attention to it so that the actual change, which is never going to happen from donations like this, but comes from government policy, can actually put that pressure on the government and show that there's a constituency for it, especially for things like poverty and homelessness in the U.S., which falls off the radar extremely quickly. And so to get it back on the agenda really requires, I don't know, millions of people joining their hands.
Nikki, I mean, we were chatting a little bit before we started taping about the context of We Are the World and Do They Know It's Christmas? And with those two, there's this really interesting dynamic that like, it's not, I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of those were about bad stuff happening elsewhere, right, in other countries. And charity, especially in this country, seems to always be more comfortable looking at other parts of the world and saying, let's raise awareness, let's raise money. This, though, does turn back in on the United States. So does it sort of, should it get some credit in that sense?
You know, I think so. Or like, you know, some of the stuff towards Africa in the early 1980s probably deserves a bit of discredit. But I think that
Sure.
this idea, especially in the U.S., right, you're in this long era of American exceptionalism in the middle of the Cold War. It's all about America sort of exuding this image of strength. And so like this idea that America can look inside and actually fix some of its own problems and recognize its own problems in a way that can be difficult in the middle of the Cold War.
Yeah, or ever. I mean, you know,
Ever,
like
yeah.
I think that like the truth is, you know, there hasn't been a great sort of American project since, the New Deal. Like, I feel like we're still riding the fumes of like, we did it, America's the best. And it's like, okay, but like, remember when we tried to improve America? That was like, that was some cool shit.
One last thing I want to talk about is the movie Us. I really love that movie. And if you've seen it, you know that Hands Across America plays a big role in the film. The movie kind of does hit on some of the themes we've been discussing here about how this country overlooks some of its deeper, uglier problems. And Jordan Peele, the director, has talked about using Hands Across America because it struck him as this pretty naive effort to address those issues. So I kind of wonder if there's two ways to think about where we are now, which is one, to say we're incredibly cynical about anything this earnest. And I suppose the other way is to say that we kind of have better authenticity meters and we're a little more clear-eyed and see through these kinds of efforts to address really systemic problems. So Akilah, is it a good thing that we see through this, or does it feel bad that we can't have these cheesy moments anymore?
Well, I think we just have to earn them now. I think that before it was just like so few and far between where anything would happen at all in your life. That it's like, wow, someone put together a campaign that doesn't look like garbage and like they want me to be a part of it.
Right.
I'm sure my mom was standing in the middle of Kentucky just like waiting for anyone to grab her in the 80s. But I think that now the problem is, I think we've seen it work really well and go over great. And then we've seen so much garbage that we're like, I know you tried, but this could have been better. And like, I also think that we are living in a time where opinions don't matter more, but people assume that they matter more than like facts. And so I think that we just listen to more opinions than we were ever exposed to. Like in the 90s, or I guess in the 80s, if, you thought Hands Across America was corny, but all your neighbors did it, you couldn't go online and be like, guys,
Right.
this shit's corny.
Right.
So you just had to like be like, fine, I guess everyone loved it. But like, we know that there had to have been some like defectors.
Yeah. And also, I mean, we should say there was some legit criticism, especially from homeless activists around this. And, Reagan participated, and I think we received a fair amount of criticism from the activist community for policy reasons and so forth.
I think that point that Akilah made about having to earn it is exactly right. And it gets at like the specific historical moment that this is happening in the 1980s. Like we have to go through the 90s when everybody is sort of ironic and detached from everything in order to get to the other side where earnestness and authenticity feels earned again. And so I think that you're right about that.
Beautiful.
All right, we're going to end with that. Nicely said. All right. Akilah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Nicole Hemmer, thanks as always.
Thank you.
This Day in Esoteric Political History is a proud member of Radiotopia from PRX. You can find out lots more about the show, including how to suggest a topic, at thisdaypod.com. Our researcher and producer is Jacob Feldman. Thursday, Akilah returns to talk about Sojourner Truth and some of the fiction and myth that surrounds her most famous speech. My name is Jody Avirgan. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Working hands of America, let the healing begin.
Working hands, rocking up your skin. Vaseline Intensive Care lets the healing begin.
Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion helps heal working hands. And now we're helping Hands Across America. Vaseline Intensive Care and Hands Across America. Let the healing begin.
Radiotopia.